And obviously, these don't need to be complete now, and it's just a way of starting to think about things that often.
So the people we would definitely tell the social worker. Our 2-year-old foster, she goes to daycare, so I think they would need to know that there have been some kind of threats made.
What would you use for language? What would you tell them?
Well, it depends on what the threat was. Like if her dad was out of jail and, said, I'm going to come get my kid, I think they would need to know that. But I think that if it was a threat against us, then I would just say, that some threats, or I might not even say threats, maybe some concerning behavior or something like that, and just to be aware that, we are the only ones allowed to pick her up. If there's a problem, if you see anything, that just makes you feel uncomfortable, just to let us know. And they also have social worker, the phone number for DCF and her social workers, so,
yep.
I mean, they would have that sort of information.
Great. Anything else that you guys got to?
Well, we did all of it. We would tell our neighbors.
Same thing?
Yeah. One of our neighbors is a police officer.
Great.
So that makes it a little more comforting, I guess.
Shouldn't that be a requirement?
I know. And we have a sitter, so we would definitely let her know as well. And then work. If, it had been threats against us.
Great. Yeah, and so in situations where someone has made, I don't ever like to use the word credible or significant, because it makes other things seem like we're taking them less seriously, and that's not the case. If a threat or a safety concern rises to a certain level, we issue what's called a staff safety awareness alert. If someone's threatened to do something to the entire building, that's been something that's happened quite a bit. Unfortunately, people threaten to blow up the building or come to the building. We create a staff safety awareness alert, and what that has is a picture of the person, the details of the threat, any vehicle information, and any related persons. And there's some hiccups with actually sharing those directly with a foster parent, because the way we get our photos is federally protected. So we're working through some of that stuff, but it's certainly something that is all information that you should be able to have. If we have vehicle information, especially if someone's threatening to come get the children, what we tell our staff to do is tell your neighbors, if they see a car hanging out for an extended period of time, write the information down, but don't hesitate to call the police. Like, there shouldn't be weirdos lingering, in a car on other people's property.
What you're saying though is also a credible. I mean, we have no idea what her father looks like. I've seen a picture.
Yeah.
If I were to pass him in the street, I probably wouldn't even recognize him. Not that I'm worried that there's no concern there, but I'm just saying, I don't know. So that would be good information to have.
Yep, and so I think that in those instances where there's been a staff safety awareness alert issued, you can certainly look at it, write down the information that you need. I don't know that you can take it home with you. We have been able to release some photos. It depends on how we get them. And what I can tell you is that a phenomenal investigative tool, no matter who you are, is Facebook. And oftentimes folks have photos on Facebook, or if you Google them, if they've been arrested or something like that. And I hate to say it, but like, there's a lot of information out there that you can access, and don't.
That's the way
it's
we
public
know how to look.
information.
Yeah.
So 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 feel free to run anybody in the glorious database of Facebook.
We do often.
Yeah.
Well, actually, to piggyback on that, so also be very careful about what you post about yourself on Facebook, because they are potentially Googling you also, just out of curiosity, even if you have a good relationship, out of curiosity, out of interest, but if there is a safety risk that. So
I encourage people to do it. I was meeting with a bunch of brand new social workers the other day, and they said, "We won't find me on Facebook. You won't find me." working for NSA because I was able to find them. I do not, but I am good at this. So yeah, just go home and Google yourself, see what pops up.
There's that map thing too, where like we can zoom right in. And
Google Earth, yep.
Yeah,
Yep, if you enter
that's
that.
kind of cool, actually.
I Google myself, I know what goes on.
Yeah. So, all right, anything else that you had on there? What about your routes? When you're thinking about driving, where would you go along your way if something was going on and you felt like you were being followed?
We talked about like going to the fire station
Yep.
or the police station, try to find public places.
Yeah. Yeah, the fire stations are a little hard sometimes because volunteer firefighters, they're not there, right? So it's only like the full paid departments where there's somebody like actually at the fire station. But banks are really good too. They have panic alarms on all banks. And so if something was really happening and you were being, followed and someone was trying to get at you, go into a bank and start screaming. They will be able to signal for help quickly, and law enforcement is used to responding there. So just so folks are aware of that. But anywhere visible too, like just really with a lot of people, big shopping plazas, things like that, are helpful. All right. Anything else on yours? Anywhere.
I say call 911. That's where they go out first.
That's a good, yeah. But, I mean, even law enforcement will tell you to get safe and then call 911.
Y'all know where we live, it's gonna take them a little while to get there.
You never know, though. Some troopers live close by.
Law enforcement would take a long time, but one thing I thought of was like if it was a threat and I really felt threatened, just to like contact the police department and let them know.
Yeah.
Maybe these people are hanging out now, I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, so what I have done over the last year has been to hopefully forge really close relationships with law enforcement so that they are attuned to our needs. And the one thing that law enforcement loves is a heads up about stuff. If there's some anticipated problem, they would rather know about it ahead of time and never have to deal with it than to find out about it way later and never have known. Local law enforcement throughout the state was starting to get used to me calling and saying, hey, I just wanted to give you a heads up about this person. They've been super escalated, they've been making threats, they've,
Even for kids though, too, that are in your house.
yeah, and law enforcement is a part of the community. They are a part of the community. They are there to be a part of the community, and they should know what's going on in their community. And they should be viewed as a resource. And as much as we can involve them and have conversations with them and create face-to-face relationships with local law enforcement, it's a great idea.
That's what I was going to ask, whether it would be encouraged if you're a foster parent who knows that they have a unstable biologic in the mix, would it be wise to be proactive and just go down to the police station with the child, making a face connection between you and the police department and saying, I live here in this town and I just wanted to come down and make a face-to-face connection with y'all and let you know that I'm a foster parent. And whether it's appropriate or not to have the child with you would be a question to ask, but, to make that connection and just say, hey, I'm just doing this as a preemptive step, because I don't know how this will all play out. I mean, is that...
Absolutely, 100%, that is a good idea. The child part...
maybe not? Okay.
Maybe not.
Okay.
Just because of their history, a child's history, if they were removed by law enforcement or have had other run-ins with law enforcement where they've seen negative interactions, I actually think that it would be great to increase their positive interactions with law enforcement at any step. But just be considerate of that, about what that would mean for that kiddo to walk into a police station or to talk to a police officer.
So how about you make a phone call and have that conversation and say maybe there could be a time where I can have a happy visit with the child. And then you kind of play it by ear?
Yep, I think that's a great point. A lot of communities have school resource officers now. You can, you have a school resource officer at your school where the kids go, your kids or the kids that you're caring for, who you consider your kids. Make a connection with that school resource officer. Oftentimes they have a lot of information too that they're willing to give to folks. And I'll tell you that this is this is happening throughout the state, and we have law enforcement who are agreeing to drive by foster homes on a regular basis if there's been an acute and significant, that was the word, threat that they do. They check in, and they do that for our resource families and for our staff, and they're great about it. I had one state trooper down in the southern part of the state, and he just went above and beyond. He ended up like stopping in a car with the bio family in it, and for some reason to stop a car, and said like, I don't want to see you here. I don't want to see you on this road. I know you have no reason to be here. Like he was really proactive about it.
Wow.
And it was phenomenal, and that's the kind of support that I believe is out there, as long as you sort of explore it and you get comfortable with asking for it. People care about what's going on, and they do want to prevent major things from happening. So anything that we can do to support that. A whole lot of noise, and people are going to start looking. And that's the other thing is and this is like for that safe citizen idea. If someone is intending to harm someone and has a specific goal in mind, they get blinders, and they're just going after whatever they're going to do. Any disruption to that is helpful, and this is how they're training, all over the country now. It's called an OODA loop. It's a World War II term that was created by like World War II pilots. If you want to Google it, I'm not going to get into it. But it's like when you're sitting at a stoplight, and you sort of know that. I'm from Essex, so I have to deal with 5 corners. I don't know if anyone else does, but like that you're going to be there for 1,000 years, and that like these guys go, and then these guys go, and then you get to go. But so you're sitting there and you're thinking about it, and if there's something that happens that interrupts your normal process of moving forward, it can take you time to recover, and sometimes that's all you need in order to get yourself to safety. So. Just so you know. So any of that type of stuff, while it may seem silly, it can actually really help disrupt someone's laser focus on what they're going to do. Any interruption is good.
I thought the panic thing, because like the commercials say TV, like keep your car keys by your bed, and
Yeah.
the panic thing,
Mm-hmm. It's true.
The idea of distracting that Shannon just mentioned, that's also something that's used at Woodside when youth are escalating.
Mm-hmm.
Staff are trained to sort of throw a silly question in, just to totally sort of disorient the youth from what they were really angry about. So I think I've heard some youth oh, what's your favorite cookie? Like just throwing something so random and off the wall out there.
It just forces them off their path. So. All right. Do you have neighbors that you would be able to sort of enlist?
Yeah, but not like, just fields all around my house. But another thing I thought was like kind of like that night or the next couple nights, like have somebody come over so there's a different vehicle in the yard. Or something.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, if I scream, nobody would hear me. That's for sure.
And sometimes that's true, in the really rural areas, but it's also true in like the more urban areas, because just nobody cares. So don't feel like you're not alone. Or people are really used to it. I lived right in downtown Burlington for a while, and I swore that if anything actually really happened to me, I feel like people would just ignore it because they were so used to the noise. So.
Phone charged, keeping water and snacks in the car for the kids, forward thinking for kid falling apart management, keeping the daycare informed, like Jill said. I just give them a heads up about, and photographs of who the concerning people might be. I mean, at my daycare, for my child, they need to know who are the only people that are allowed to pick up. They need an advance notice from me, a verbal, and they would like a photograph.
Yep.
So I feel like that's just, it's probably expected from most daycares. I don't know if it is, probably, but proactive, keeping friendly relationships with my next door neighbors, making it an effort as part of my life management, building relationships with people, so that because we live in a community, we don't live independent of other people. It's important to foster relationships periodically, that it'd be easier just to leave undone, easier to not pour into nearby relationships that are not people you would normally socialize socialize with, but people that you need to be able to rely on. Something were to happen, I feel like you should invest in that periodically.
Absolutely.
And I do. Let's see. Something I could change would be to keep my home and car locked. I think that something I would do is to keep my older son, who is at home, informed of the situation. And where would I go? Again, I would pick any one of 3 or 4 people who live within a 5 or 7 minute drive if there was an immediate need.
Yep.
Or else, a public place like you already said. So, but I wouldn't go to family members for the desire to not add to potential chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would never go to my parents' house because I wouldn't want them to get dragged into anything.
Yep. Bring her with your neighbor and talk about, like, hey, listen, if anything ever happened at home, what would you do? Like, what would you, and you might be able to impart some wisdom on, on whoever that is, and come up with things that you can think about for your own safety for any number of reasons. Like I said, this world is now crazy, and so we need to be mindful of this all the time. I don't think it's ever a bad thing to like I said, be planful. So, all right. Renee?
When I thought about safety planning, I thought about like the kinship aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
So like really communicating with my kids, because I have older children who are still at that age where like they understand something might be wrong, but well, that's my cousin or that's my grandparent, why can't I open the door type deal. So really making sure that I'm fair with them. And we actually did some safety planning in November. We had heard from our daughter's mother in, I don't know, like 16 months, thereabouts, and all of a sudden she was like, hey, I'm going to be in Burlington, I'd like to have coffee. And I went into crisis mode because I was like, what the hell are her intentions? We haven't talked to her in months, we haven't seen her, nothing. We let our daycare know, we provided a picture of the daycare, we didn't allow our children to walk home for that, like a whole week and a half, a couple days prior, a couple days after. She doesn't know where we live, and we want to keep it that way. When I went to meet her, I didn't drive myself. I had a friend drive me so that she couldn't recognize my vehicle. I tried to show up early. I definitely left way after. So I was just trying to be like alert to, I still am not really sure what your intentions are. So even though you say you want to have coffee and just talk, be hyper vigilant about everything. The daycare was a really big piece though, because they don't have secure doors. So they're, they work with DCF and everything, like they understand the safety aspects and they're all certified, but they're one of the ones that doesn't have a code on their door. So like I remember going in and being like, so what's your procedure? And like I'm letting you know this and I'm giving you a picture, but is it something like you alert children to need for, or is it just something like they know like this could happen? What is your policy? So they went through all of that because I wasn't aware of what like their policy and procedure was.
Great. Awesome.
I like that arrive early and leave late. That was
Yeah.
a good one.
Well, no, it allowed me to see like how did she get here? Like maybe she didn't have a license, did she drive herself, who brought her? It allowed me to see like, okay, you came with that person and that person left, where'd they go?
Yep. Great. Marty?
I got most of what's already been said.
Okay.
Mine's pretty simple, but I do have a question on exactly what information is given about the foster parents. I mean, do they just have your name?
Marty's not a current foster parent, just so you know.
Okay. So we've looked at that quite a bit, and we've put some, and I think Lindsay will probably touch on this, about information sharing about foster parent address and stuff like that. Historically, there's been a practice of being able to share that information, and I think we're more cognizant of it now. What I can tell you is that we are able, as long as we can, as long as we have a good argument for it, we can actually have confidential placements. What is interesting about a lot of these situations is that we don't know about them in the initial phases of a case. So oftentimes foster parents are working with birth families. You're doing shared parenting meetings. You're introducing yourself to them. You're finding out information about their child, about them. They're trying to build a positive relationship to build towards a good case plan. And sometimes something happens after that. So they already know who you are. You've already shared some information with them because we're humans and we interact with folks. So I think it can really be dependent about if we know that there's an absolute safety concern, we know that this person is a very dangerous individual. We've kept confidential placements for a long period of time. I have some specific recollections about cases there that we've not told anyone where the children were for safety reasons. But those are rare. And what I have to say is that, while I can tell you that there were those however many hundreds of threats, it's still not something that people are encountering every day, especially for our resource families. This is something that is out of the norm. It is not something that happens on every case. Yes, we need to be planful for it all the time, but we don't need to, cross over into that side where we're saying, I'm just waiting for that bio family to make a threat against me, because that's not oftentimes not the case. There is, and I think that we need to think about this, that for our resource families, you're caring for their child. There is some innate understanding on that person's part that you are keeping their child safe. You're feeding them, you're clothing them, you're getting them where they need to go. There's some really positive aspects about the resource families that don't exist with the staff.
Right.
So I think it's always important to sort of consider those, because I think that it's very easy for folks to say, social workers getting threatened all over the place. How can I be safe? And what I can tell you is that we've been able to maintain a vast majority of our staff. They're not paralyzed to come into work every day, even though we have these threats coming, and we're able to retain resource families, even though that there is an inherent risk in being involved in our system. It is, like I said before, it is not the norm, but it is something that we're now willing to talk about. I think that for a long time, these topics were scary for everybody. Nobody knew the right thing to say. Nobody wanted to trigger anyone or traumatize them. But we're moving, from the, we're operating under the empowerment model that, information is power, that we need to empower our staff, our resource families to feel like they can be an active participant in their safety. And we're going to give you whatever tools we can impart on you in order to be a part of that.
Overly cautious?
Yep.
Then I'm really cautious, because that's what I'm, you know what I mean?
So I want to be aware that I know you have some place to be. Can I just ask a quick question, because something that came up in the caregiver safety survey that we sent out, most foster caregivers or kinship care providers are more concerned about safety threats from within the home from youth. When they are thinking about doing a personal protection plan, would you have any tips for them on what to include, what kinds of things to think about when it's a...
Yeah, I think it's the same stuff. It's about, being planful with your neighbors, thinking about the transportation piece. That's been, not even as, but as a social worker, that was a, very stressful thing to be transporting youth who were escalated for whatever reason. If you just removed them, or if you're, moving them from foster home to foster home, if you're picking them up because they were just on run and sitting at the police station for 6 hours, there's that transportation piece is always a little bit concerning. And so I think for that stuff, don't have the youth sit behind you in the car. Not directly behind you. Have them sit over in this seat over here, because then they can't grab the seatbelt. Use the child locks. And I think in that situation, really talking about that with the social worker and saying, I'm really nervous about this kiddo in my home. What can I do at home in order to make sure that that we're all safe? I don't want to view this kid like they're going to hurt me, but I want to know what to do in the event that they start breaking things, or what can I do, because I think oftentimes, it's also really scary when a kid's flipping out about whether or not you restrain them. Have you been trained in restraint? Are you going to get in trouble for restraining them? So really, it's about having that conversation with your social worker about the way you're feeling, and not just sitting with it alone. And I think that that's always something that we need to be mindful of, is that anything regarding safety, we don't have to do alone. There's a lot of people out there who need to think about it too.
Thanks.